obedience, a commander who is also one who oversees perhaps the thought of a battle. And so this picture is this commander who's commanding a scenario, commanding with orders, and as they're followed, the scene unfolds the way it is supposed to. It is not a surprise. The thought of her saying, Lord, is her referencing, God, I recognize you are the one who's in control. Now, what does that mean for Mary? I don't have to trust in myself. I don't have to trust in my 14, 16, or 18-year-old brain. I don't have to trust Joseph because he doesn't have any more answers than I do. What I can do is trust the God who is the commander, that if something does go awry, he makes it right because he's the one who's in control. You realize this morning we serve that same sort of God today? The God who controls this week, the God who controls the weather, the God who controls your life and mine. He is a God who is a commander, and his commands are followed. As those commands are followed, then that means today, as you and I have a choice, whose commands are we following? Whose obedience do we want to submit to? And whose humility will we place ourselves under in that authority? God's love this morning, as he has the ability to command and never leaves us or forsakes us. God's love this morning, letter B, makes us perfect. For God's love, there is no love like his love. And then letter C, when we don't know it all, it is good to know a God who does. And whether you're young or old this morning, I hope you can stop and realize, I do have a God who knows it all. I do have a God who I can trust. I do have a God that when I'm going through things or I'm seeing things that don't make sense, God is not bothered by it. He has all the answers. And he's a God who's patient and lets me ask some questions in faith. Then lastly this morning, Mary, as she understood, she had a God who was in control. For you and I, we also need to understand to let God lead us forward. Mary, as I mentioned, had questions, and it's fine for her to have them because the questions were questions of her faith, not questions of her fear. Letter A in our notes, as you look at verse 34 with me, it says, Then said Mary unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing I know not a man? She wasn't giving a display of doubts, like, what are you talking about, God? You're crazy. You're loony. God, you must not have a clue what's going on. She's not asking questions like that. But it's a display of faith because she says simply, how can this happen? Lord, how can this occur? How can this be? How can this be a possibility? God, I'm willing to go through it. I'm willing to follow it, but I need to know what is the step number 1, let alone step number 30. How can this happen? Letter C, her questions were also a display of proof. Verse 36, not only does she not understand her own life, but verse 36 talks about Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you aren't familiar with the Christmas story, it is Mary's cousin. There's a vast age group here in Mary's relationship. Elizabeth, for the most part, the Bible just says she's past the years of bearing children. So we don't really know what that age would be, but we can make some assumptions here. As the Bible would unfold some things, some people think that Elizabeth was 88 years old. How many at 88 would say, let's have a child? That sounds like a good idea. No. Number 1, birthing would be horrible and be a challenge. Number 2, raising the child. And then by the time you hit college age, you'd be like 120 or something. And you're just saying, I don't think I want to go through that again. There's just some scenarios there. It's not good timing. Elizabeth seems like she's a character out of place in the story. But really what God is saying is, hey, Mary, if you don't think I can do this, guess what I've already done? I've made Elizabeth, who is past years of bearing. She may be 60, she may be 70, she may be 88. But here's the point. God said, for 6 months now, she's been pregnant, and you didn't even know. And God is saying, Mary, if I can do that for Elizabeth, then I can surely do this for you because you're within the birthing age. And so Mary has to step back and say, God, you got it. God, you understand. God, you know. It's obvious. If you can do this, you can do that. And God, I have no reason to argue, concern, or worry. I may not have all the answers, but I have every reason to trust you. Do you know this morning you and I have every reason to trust God? Because his word promises that he's given us everything that pertains to life and godliness. There's nothing in this world that we're going to have to say, well, God, what about this in 2025? Or, God, did you know this was going to happen? Or, God, what about these scenarios? I don't really see them written out chapter and verse in the Bible. Maybe we just need to go back and say, Lord, I can trust you. And so I'm going to follow your word, knowing you're going to lead me in what is good and right for my life. So Mary gives us this picture. Elizabeth shows us the proof of what God is able to do. Verse 37, the Bible simply says this, for with God nothing shall be impossible. God has power to do what he wants with your life or with mine. And letter E in your notes, Mary longed to do the will of God. How do we know that? Because Mary's response after the angel says in verse 37 what he says. Mary said, behold, the handmaid of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word. And the angel departed from her. Why did the angel leave? Nothing left to say. Conversation's over. We've got it all laid out. And the very fact that Mary says, behold, it means to look upon something intently. To say, God, I'm going to look at what you're telling me and what you're going to do, and I'm going to watch it unfold in my life. I am going to trust you. When she uses the term handmaid here, it's really the lowest kind of servant. It's the job nobody would want. It's the responsibility no one would grapple or fight for. And yet Mary says, be it unto me, I am the handmaid of the Lord. I will be humble and grateful to serve how God wants. You know, if you want to be a great Christian tonight, if you want to be a huge help to this church, if you want to be a blessing to God and a monumental source of help in this community, I promise you this, just be someone who's humble and grateful to say, God, I'll serve however you want me to. God, I'll be humble and grateful to serve however you need me. And not every job's going to be glamorous. God, I get that. Not every response is going to be one I love. Not everything is going to make me happy. But God, if I'm humble and willing to serve you in any capacity, I will be the type of person that you want me to be. Winter season, as we're in it right now, as of just the last couple hours or days. The winter season often is days filled with cold, crisp blue skies that we can enjoy, but also in a matter of a few hours, the fog creeps in and it's too thick to see too far. So I left Fresno just this past weekend. I left about 6 in the morning, took some back roads through some areas of Madera, if you know that kind of area. But as I left at 6 in the morning, it didn't take me too long to kind of drive down a hill, hit the bottom floor of the valley, and realize I think I left too early. Because on that particular day, fog had settled in this last weekend, and I could not see more than 50 feet in front of me. I'm driving through the fog on the highway, and it was so thick that I was saying, Lord, if a cow steps out, I'm not going to see it. So, Lord, give me some protection. Help me to have that safety. And it was so thick for the gentleman that would understand thick fog. When I saw a car coming at me, I said, oh, at least I know the road's straight. I'm okay here. But that's how bad it was. Cars were driving 55, 60 miles an hour, trying to pass me, get around me, doing whatever they want. I said, you know what? I'm going 45 because that's all I can see and that's all I feel safe with. But that fog, as it crept in, was something that was so thick, so heavy, I couldn't see the next direction I was supposed to take. What I had to do is trust someone else who designed the road to lead me to where I was wanting to go. Spiritually, in the same way, fog might be thick in our life this Christmas. Might have some questions. We say, God, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Why am I having to go through whatever? And whether it be Christmas, 2025, or just a moment in your life, I want you to connect this. God designed the road. God knows where it's going to end. God knows where it's going to lead you to. And if you're just faithful to plod along, even at a slow pace, God will say, if you keep humble and you'll be grateful, we'll get there together because I know what I'm doing and I'm able to do the impossible with your life. Can I tell you this morning, every one of us are an impossible case to fix or to change or make exactly what we want to be. But unless we are in God's hands, God says, it's okay. I'm an expert at doing the impossible. I hope this morning as I make that statement, you and I would be humble enough to say, God, that's good because I'm not an expert. I don't know what I'm doing. And as long as I follow you, God, I realize that is the key. Be it unto me according to thy word. Mary's famous phrase carries a whole lot more weight for us today, even 2,000 years later.